And at last we are live and I can now see myself. Once again, the usual teething problem, so thanks for being patient. I can tell you why I couldn't see myself, and it's quite simple. I thought I would try a different camera because at the moment I'm still using the webcam on the Mac here, and I thought I'd try the GoPro. And for some bizarre reason, and I have no idea why, the Mac thought that I was still using the GoPro, even when the GoPro is not connected to the not connected. So that's why there was a small delay there. So I can see one person has joined us. So we'll see whether anybody else, pops along, and we'll just have a little chat. Any questions, feel free. It's a bit different doing it here when I'm when I'm camping in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of easier out there. But I can start off with a little story. Have I got my? I haven't got it. Anyway, doesn't matter. Last time that we were here, I told you a story about when I went to Dartmoor with my parents. Well, the next time I went to Dartmoor was with a friend, and it was in the late 90s. And if any of you know Hound Tour, hello, Scout. Lovely, thank you. You're the one and only at the moment. You won't know Hound Tour, being over in that neck of the woods, but bizarrely, and I don't quite know why, but Dartmoor has two Hound tours. I don't know whose bizarre idea that was, but there are two Hound tours. One you can quite literally park next to, and it's about, I don't know, 5-minute walk from a car park. And then the other one you can also park relatively close to, but is a bit of a trek and is maybe half an hour or an hour from the car park. So I certainly wasn't walking to that one in the late 1990s. So parked in the car park, and it was a bit misty as usual for Dartmoor, and I had a compass with me. Bizarrely, I had a compass but didn't have a map. I had no idea how to use a map or a compass back then. I didn't know anything like that. So I started walking up towards Hound Tour, and it was in, we'll say for argument's sake, a northerly direction to keep it incredibly simple. And when I got up to Hound Tour, obviously you would think that the simple thing to do would be to simply go in the opposite direction to where you'd been going, which it obviously was south, but for some bizarre reason I'd actually forgotten that I was going north. So of course, when it was time to head back to the car park, I was sort of scratching my head thinking, now, did we come north or did we go south? And I honestly couldn't, stupidly, I couldn't remember, because obviously we spent a bit of time, I was with our friend, and we spent a bit of time nattering up there and everything like that. I completely got distracted about which direction we were going. So I thought, okay, well, we were probably going south, so let's go north anyway, which of course was completely and utterly in the wrong direction. So we carried on walking north, and it was just lucky. And of course, if you know that area, if you go on north, you're going to go down, and then you're going to come to an old ruin down there. And we actually headed down towards that ruin, unbeknown to us, and luckily, it was lucky too. There were some walkers walking towards us, and I said, "Oh, by the way, we're trying to find the car park. Are we walking in the right direction?" And of course, they knew what they were doing, so they said, "No, you need to go in the other direction." So I felt a right Charlie in that regard, having to turn around with my friend who knew absolutely nothing about the outdoors at all. Rather sheepishly said, "Well, okay, actually, sorry, we've got to go in the other direction." So anyway, we headed back. We found the car easily enough once I'd figured out that actually we needed to go south and not north. So that was kind of like my first experience of trying to unsuccessfully navigate on Dartmoor. And it was a simple one, but a lesson that I learnt very easily in the early days. And I wouldn't even, back then I wasn't even walking, for goodness sake. It's literally just walking around the playing field or something like that. So, but I did at least have a compass with me. I just simply forgot which way I was walking. So obviously after that, I simply easily remembered, when you're going in that direction, mark it on your compass. So if I'd have thought about it, because I didn't even, because obviously on your compass now, or a compass back then as well, you could actually rotate the bezel on the compass, but I didn't do that. I just looked at the compass and could see it pointing in that direction. So I thought, well, if it's pointing that way, and I think I just looked at it and I said, oh, I think it's like north or something like that. And then headed off on up to the Tor. And then, of course, I forgot which way I was going. But, of course, if I had have used the compass properly, I'd have lined the compass up north, and then I would have known that's the direction that I was going. And then, of course, when it was time to come off the Tor, then I'd have just looked at the compass, turned the compass around without having to think about north, south, east, or west, or anything like that. Turn the compass around and then go in the opposite direction to what you've been going. And I would have easily got back to the car super quick. So it was kind of like a interesting lesson that I had on that one. So that was about my story of that Dartmoor trip. Other than that, there wasn't any other walking. It was just eating hot dogs and things like that. But that does bring us on to navigation. Let's have a sip of water a minute. You have to excuse the mess behind. I'll clean it up one day in the next 20,000 years. So the next time that I went down to Dartmoor was in 2003. Met Sue in 2000. Of course, that was my late wife from back then. Met Sue in 2000. She moved here in 2001. And then in 2002, we took our first holiday down to Dartmoor. And back then, I wasn't wearing shoes. I was wearing boots because I thought you got to get your feet right. So let's wear boots. And basically, I sort of took two pairs. I took two pairs of boots with me because I was so afraid of wet feet back then that I was thinking that if I had one pair of boots and they got wet, then I wouldn't be able to walk or my feet would fall off or something stupid like that. So I actually had two pairs of boots, took two pairs with me. And we went down there. We had a week down there. Completely different dogs to what we have now, of course. Well, we had best back then. So we went down there, and before going, I had a map, and basically on the map I had this very old. Well, not on the map. I had a very old GPS unit. It was a silver SILVA. I assume they still make stuff. Wait, this is the compasses. So the compasses that we get, the silver compass, that company, they made GPS units back in the day, and these GPS units were quite big, chunky things. I chucked it out in the end, which was a bit of a shame because it kind of would have been fun to keep it. But this power pack here, that's my hand, and this silver unit, this GPS unit, was at least as big as this, maybe even bigger, and it had like a tiny little screen on it there. There was no mapping. It was very limited to what you could do, but basically you could put in waypoints. So you had to get your compass out. It was all so old-fashioned back then. Now it's all computerized, and you do it all on your phone now. But back in 2003, when I first started using a GPS unit down for Dartmoor, you literally had this unit, which isn't a power pack, obviously, but it had this tiny little screen on it, and you got your map and your compass, and then I had a dining room table. This is my dining room, but it's not my dining room now. But this is a dining room, and I had a dining room table in there at the time, and I put my map down on the dining room table, and then I was using the compass to mark off the waypoints, you know, with the grid references, because what you used to be able to do is you could sort of type in the name of the route you wanted to take, and you could then put in the bearings, or not the bearings, the grid reference into this, not this power pack, but into what was at the time a GPS unit. And basically it was like one point, and then you took the grid reference for the next one, and then you ended up putting that waypoint in, and then you had to get the compass and line up, you know, 624 7 whatever it was for the grid bearing, you know, the grid reference. So basically you just put in like 20 odd grid references for approximately where you were walking, and then you kind of then hope that your GPS unit didn't fail, because back in those days I had very limited map reading experience, very, very limited to how much I was able to read a map or use a compass. I was still very, I could look at the map and I had a general idea as to what it was showing me, but that was about it. Very, very limited. So we went down there. We had, as I said, we had Bess and, hello John, we had Bess and a very old dog that back then called Sasha. And we had a week down there, and this is 2003 for the newcomers. So this is back in the day, and this was the first time that I was properly walking on Dartmoor. So the first trip that we did, we parked in the car park at Bractal car park, which is one I've used quite a few times, where I met Darren this year still. And we headed over towards Bractal, and then from there I was literally following this GPS unit. I had almost no idea where we were really going. I was just following points on this, and it was like saying, you know, 1 kilometer go in that direction, and then, you know, 500 meters go that way, or whatever it was doing. We were just blindly following this ancient, well, it was new at the time, GPS unit. I mean, it's ridiculous to think now that, you know, you went from 20 years ago, a GPS unit that was bigger than this, with no mapping and a screen that was like probably barely bigger than that type of thing, to mapping on your watch now. It's ridiculous how technology has moved on. But anyway, we went over and we eventually got to Bleak House. So in some of my videos, you will have seen me near Bleak House at the back of Lint's Tor. Was it Lint? No, not Lint's Tor. Great Thing Tor. Great Links Tor. And we kind of got there, and the weather wasn't that brilliant, I must admit. It was really quite nerve-wracking, to say the least. I was really quite nervous. It was fine. I didn't really worry about it, to be honest. You probably thought, well, if I'm all right, then everything must be okay. But I was quite nervous on doing this, to be honest, because we could have easily have got lost. We could easily have got lost. So we got to Bleak House, and then there's another tour just behind it called Green Tor. So we got to Green Tor straight afterwards. And I think we had a tin of beans with us or something ridiculous like that. So we opened this tin of beans. We were like eating this tin of beans and a tin of rice pudding or something cold. I don't think we bothered warming it up. And then from there, and then what I remember now, because it's a long time ago, but what I remember now is that the grass back then was very, very tall. And I'm not surprised, actually, now, because I do vaguely remember from walking in that area last year and with Darren this year, actually around Green Tor, it is very tall grass there. And bearing in mind, all we'd ever done was literally just like walking the playing field or something like that. So, of course, there we are out by Green Tor with this massive grass growing up around us. And it was really was quite nerve-wracking, I must admit. So I said to Sue, look, what we need to do is we need to just, because I think I set the GPS to go off in a different route, and we were going to go off somewhere else and then swing around, because we had no idea what the terrain was going. We probably thought it was like a bowling ball lawn out there or something like that. And this stuff was like really, really difficult to walk on. So we ended up then, basically, I knew that there was a track not that far away. So I said to Sue, look, what we need to do is we need to get on that track and then just get back to the car. And that was basically, and we did, thankfully we found that track easily enough, and then we just followed the track all the way around. It's quite a long way around, but we got back to the car eventually. But that was quite a nerve-wracking trip, but we got through it easily. It was fine. And then I think the next day we went to an otter sanctuary or something like that, saw some otters or something. And then the day after that, we were back out on the bloody moors again. So we did another walk, and I think this one was down similar to where I camp now, sort of at Harford areas where we parked the car down there. I think this was the next walk that we did. And I don't know whether anyone has been out walking and has thought that you've seen a ghost or something like that. But we were out walking again, and we were on the track, because there is a track down there. It was an old miners' railway line. So we were down there, and we were walking along there, literally blindly once again, following this GPS unit, and it was misty. You could see absolutely nothing. I mean, this was a real tough introduction to walking on Dartmoor, and it was a good test of nerve, I have to say, because like I said, literally we were just following this GPS unit pointing us in which direction to go to, and luckily there aren't any cliffs that you can fall off or anything like that, so it was relatively safe. But if this GPS unit had packed up or something like that, I must admit, I think we probably would have been a bit upped. But anyway, luckily it never packed up, and it stayed faithful the whole week that we were down there. Anyway, we were walking along this track, and then out of apps, and it was misty. You couldn't see anything. I mean, it was so misty. You know, you could probably see like, I don't know, 20 or 30 meters, if that. And then out of nowhere, we were heading back towards the car, because we'd done a little circular walk. We didn't walk too far, but we did a little circular walk, mostly staying on this path. Oh no, I actually, no, I remember. God, it's so long ago now. No, I remember now. We were on that path coming back. Yeah, we were on that path coming back, and that's when we saw the ghost coming back to the car. No, we parked the car at the top of the Harford when the car park was open. They've closed the car park now, which is very useful. So we parked the car in the car park. That's right. And then we followed the wall into a copse of trees, and then we went down to a river. And the original plan was to cross the river, and then follow another path along, and then swing around the back, and then from there pick up the path that I was talking about earlier on. I forgot what we were doing. So we got down to the river, and bearing in mind it wasn't misty down there, because it was only misty up the top, but bearing in mind it was misty everywhere, we'd never in our lives done anything like this at all. Back then we wouldn't have had walking poles. We would have had very basic clothing. I don't think we would have even, we had boots. We had boots, because I had Scarpa boots. I had 2 pairs of Scarpa boots. The Scarpa, I can't remember what they're called now, but the big chunky ones, not the Manta, but the one just below the Manta, and then there was one just below that. I think that was the Delta, the SL. I had the Scarpa SL boot, which was a nice boot actually, bloody heavy, but yeah. So I had those boots. That's right. And we got down to the river. In fact, no, I tell a lie. We would have had walking poles, because for the year before we would have been walking around Cheddar all the time, once a week. So no, we would have had poles too. Like I said, literally, you're going back 20 years. So you're testing the memory here a bit. So we got down to this river, and we'd never done anything like that at all. And it was quite a deep, wide river. And it certainly entailed getting into the river, and it would have been knee deep. And I must admit, we kind of chickened out of crossing that river, because, like I said, we'd never ever done anything like that before. So, although ironically, about 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, I crossed that river coming in the other direction. That's in the video. That might even be in the video when I did the Hillyberg Acto camp a long time ago. Whether I filmed that crossing, I'm not quite sure, but that might have been that trip actually. So like I said, we chickened out crossing that river. So we kept walking along this side of the river. And again, it was like really, really tussocky and overgrown and everything else like that. But eventually we swung around, came up to this track that we were walking back towards the car, and just out of absolutely nowhere, someone ran past us like a jogger. I mean, it was obviously a jogger. I mean, obviously it wasn't a ghost, and I don't really believe in all that mumbo jumbo stuff. But someone just ran literally out of nowhere. They were completely and utterly dressed in white. They were white, like a ghost. I mean, I don't know how many people would be out walking or running, literally dressed in white, head to foot white, and that was it. And then they just ran past us, and then they were gone. And it was, I'm sure it wasn't a ghost. I'm very sure it wasn't a ghost, but it was just like really, really weird how somebody would be running, jogging, running, whatever, on this track, on Dartmoor, past us, completely dressed in white, and they came out of nowhere, and then they just disappeared. And it was the weirdest experience ever that I've had down there. Anyway, we carried on walking, and then luckily, because on that track, you have to take a right-hand turn at the right time, to head back down to the car park. And luckily, as I say, the GPS unit told us where to go, and we got back down there. So that worked out okay. So that was another funny experience down there. And then we did another day trip or something like that to a Pixie museum or something the next day. And then the day after that, we were back on the moors again, walking. And this was probably one of our biggest walks. And I must admit, I can't remember where it was on the moors down there. But oh, no, hang on a minute. Actually, no, I do remember now. It was on the South Moor, and we parked at something bridge. Shipley Bridge. And we parked at Shipley Bridge, and then you walk along a track, and there's a dam or something like that up there. But before you get to the dam, there's a track that goes off, or a path that goes off to the left-hand side, and that literally takes you into the middle of the moor, of the South Moor. And bearing in mind, once again, that we had absolutely no idea where we were going or what we were doing. We're literally following this GPS unit, completely blind. I mean, this was the biggest trip of them all, because the other ones, at least we were on a track, but this one we were literally just crossing tussocks and grass and things like that, following this thing. And I remember we had, because at that time Sasha, my dog, she was probably about 10 or 11 years old. She was knocking on a bit. She might even have been older than that, actually. Actually, when I come to think of it, I think she was about 40. She was 12. She was either 13 or 14, because I think she died when she was 16, and we got married in 2004 at that time. And I think she was about 16 when she died. So I reckon she must have been about 14. That's right. So we were walking along. I was in the lead, because Sue was always way behind me. She was always a very slow walker. And I was in the lead, walking ahead, and she was like struggling to keep up because it was quite difficult going. So we were walking along, and she sort of called out from behind, "Wait, Tony, slow down. Wait for Sasha." So of course I looked round, and she could see Sasha behind her. I couldn't even. This was a black dog. This wasn't a white dog. It wasn't a particularly small dog, and it was so misty. I looked back, and I couldn't even see Sasha back there. So anyway, we're waiting for Sasha to catch up with us, and we stayed a bit closer together. So that was kind of like another interesting lesson, that if you're walking and there are other people with you, one, don't walk too far ahead of your fiance at that time, and keep an eye on your dog to make sure that your dog isn't sort of lounging, so far behind, especially if it's an older dog, that it can't get, lost in the middle of the moor, because when Sasha was younger, she should have been running around and everything like that. But she was knocking on in years on that trip. So that was the last big trip that we took her on. But then again, like I said, I literally just remember just walking completely blind, following this GPS unit, and we found somewhere to stop. We stopped there, and we got the old cooker out, because I used to take a gas cooker, and we boiled up some beans or a rice pudding or something like that. And we had something to eat out there. And that was a really, truly memorable trip, that one, because you could see nothing. A number of times I go to somewhere new. So when I've been to the Lake District twice now in the last month or two, and I haven't seen the Lake District. I've been to Lake District and I haven't seen it yet. So that was another, and we got back to the car, luckily. But that was an interesting experience as well. So what's let's see what's going on. I remember hiking in huge mountaineering boots in the 90s. Always had knee pains and blisters. Yeah, it took me probably another year from when I was thinking, you've got to have boots, you've got to have dry feet, because like I said, this trip was 2003, and it was at least another year before I started realizing, well, actually, you don't need big heavy boots. You can get away with something, you know, a lot lighter, you know, than heavy boots, and you don't need heavy boots at all. And this last trip, when I went to the Lake District in November, at the end of October, you know, I took my trail shoes then, and it was perfectly warm enough. I mean, it was about 10 degrees or something like that, but it's plenty warm enough for trail shoes. Yes, your feet get soaked, but it doesn't matter at all, because when you get into camp, just dry your feet off. So that, yeah, dry, you know, the only time I really put boots on is if it's like really, really cold now. Although I must admit, when I go down to Dartmoor now and I'm just lounging around in camp more, I tend to wear like not heavy boots, but lightweight boots, mainly just so that I got dry feet when I get there. And then if I'm moving around camp, you know, during the day, then it's just nice to have dry boots on, and it's just such a short walk, and there's no river crossings, and you know, there's nothing your feet are going to drop down into. So I must admit, now I probably tend to wear lightweight boots more than if I was doing proper walking. But when I was in the Lake District, then I just simply wore my trail shoes. And that was plenty. And my first trail shoes were Basque, which interestingly, because I know, Scout, you're in America, aren't you? My first trail shoes were Basque, and I went into, I think it was like REI, and maybe 2004 or 2005 with my dad, because I went on a holiday with my dad to America then. And I went into REI or somewhere like that, looking for some trail shoes that were actually comfortable, because I tried a couple here. I tried a couple of like approach shoes, what they were like call them here, but like leather, and they really weren't very comfortable. I didn't like them at all, because leather is no good. You don't want leather if you're going to be crossing bogs and that type of stuff, because you're just going to get, you know, your leather shoe is going to fill up with water, and then it's not going to get out of your leather shoe. So I tried so those leather shoes, I did get leather shoes, and I tried those, in 2004. That's right. And that was in the Lake District. I'll maybe try and save that story for another time. But in 2004, the honeymoon we saw at that time was in the Lake District, so more walking. And I did take leather shoes then, and they were an absolute nightmare in the lakes. But again, it was kind of like a lesson learned, really. So that was when in 2005, I was in America with my dad. It was probably Arizona or something like that. Went into REI, bought a pair of Basque trail running shoes, which was all like a mesh outer, very, very breathable. And I used those for at least 2 or 3 years walking down Montane, and they were incredibly comfortable. And I never once had any problems wearing them. If they got wet, they got wet. And it didn't bother me at all. I mean, Sue bless her, she still carried on wearing her boots because that was what she was comfortable doing. She couldn't quite understand why I was happy getting her feet wet, but it was just much, much more comfortable. Like the GPS units, it's amazing to see how shoe mentality has changed for hiking footwear now from back when we started hiking. Well, the other interesting thing there, Scout, is it's literally you and I think there's a couple of other people there as well, a couple of lurkers in the background, a couple of lurkers in the background. It's from what I understand, is if you go back like 100 years, well, in fact, if you go back to the Romans, they were like crossing empires and crossing continents in sandals. And then obviously, well, something like sandals, wasn't it, really? And then obviously you then get, you know, moving forward. And I'm sure when people went walking in the olden days, it was probably, they probably just wore shoes. I bet these old people, this I can't remember his name now, Wainwright or whatever he is, Wainwright, who used to do walking in the Lake District a long time ago. I bet he didn't wear boots. I bet he went walking in the Lake District just wearing some old shoes or something like that. And then at some time in the 1940s or 50s or 60s or something like that, when people started climbing mountains and wearing boots to climb the mountains, that's when the boot revolution took off. Now, I might be completely wrong. I'm not an expert on this at all, but I think that's about the time when people started thinking that they had to wear boots. And then, of course, Gore-Tex came out at some point in the, I don't know, when did Gore-Tex come out? 70s, 80s, something like that, 90s, whatever. So, you know, you probably had this boot revolution in the 50s, 60s, or whenever it was. And then Gore-Tex came out, and then of course the marketing people take over, and then of course it's you got to have ankle support, you've got to have dry feet and everything else like that. I'm sure in the olden days they didn't have ankle support, and I'm sure in the olden days they didn't have dry feet all the time, yet somehow they managed to survive. And then it's only obviously in the last and then of course, like I said, it was then boots, which I did. I mean, I did the Duke of Edinburgh Award when I was at school, and we had to wear boots for, you know, for that, and the blisters that I had for that. And this trip, I'll maybe talk about this hike that I did with the school as well one day. Actually, that might be an interesting thing to talk about another time. Yeah, I need to remember that because that was like my first camping experience at school, and that was just a nightmare. And we had to wear boots for that. So for many, many years, you just, you know, you had your head filled with that you have to wear boots, and that's it. You know, you've got a dry feet, ankle support, and all that mumbo jumbo. And then, of course, I think these long distance hikers and things like that started walking across in America, crossing the Pacific Crest Trail and the CDT, whatever it is, and these other long distance trails. And I think, as of course with Chris Townsend, when he was walking this, like everyone else who was doing these long distance walks, started these walks off in boots. And then I think they all kind of like got, I don't know, what, a few miles in with their feet in agony. And then I think they just changed over to probably back in at that time to trainers or something like that, because it was just more comfortable to walk in trainers. And of course now they've, you know, gone into like trail runners and all that type of stuff, a bit more technical now. But basically, I think it kind of came from these long distance walkers who then kind of like gave the idea, well, actually, no, you don't need these boots. I'm sure there were people that weren't wearing boots as well. But the impression that I get is that it was these long distance walkers in America, and it kind of then spread from that. And then we then eventually, you know, came back to the point where some of us actually aren't afraid to get wet feet, you know, for a while during the day. And it just doesn't bother me at all. I mean, like I said, as long as it's not too cold, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. And if your feet do get wet, they dry out anyway. As long as you're not, because if you walk through another bog or something like that, then they're not going to dry out. But if it's not freezing cold, it's not too cold, and you're walking, and then you get your feet wet, and if you've got trail runners on or something like that, it's also much easier just to cross a river or a stream, because then you don't have to worry about taking your boots off or something like that. You just keep your trail shoes on, cross the stream, get out and just carry on walking, and it's a hell of a lot easier. Because if I'm wearing boots, I'm constantly sort of looking down, thinking, oh, is my boot going to sink into a bog? And am I going to get a wet foot from that? So I'd rather just wear trail shoes. And if I get wet feet, I get wet feet, and then my foot ain't going to dry off. Won't fall off, I mean. So yeah, it's just much easier that way. But even now, everybody says, no, you must wear boots, you've got to wear boots. I had a bad... I had this fissy cardless thing on my I can't think what the bloody thing is called. Oh God. Whatever it's called, when your foot's sore, it's this sore foot thing. And of course, the first thing I did was, when I had that, was go and see the doctor. And the doctor said, what are you wearing? And I said, well, I just wear trail shoes. And he says, well, no, you can't do that. You must wear boots. So even the medical profession are like saying, oh, you must wear boots and everything else like that. So it's probably hardly surprising, that so many people think you've got to wear boots, because most of the medical people are telling you have to, apart from probably foot experts, because they probably tell you to wear soft shoes, I would imagine. So that was kind of interesting. Kind of distracting myself as well as going there. It's amazing to how human mentality has changed. Yeah. I mean, it is. Like I said, even now people are afraid of wet feet. Even now, it's just something that they're just not. They just can't quite grasp that actually it's okay to get your feet wet. And like I said, if you've got a boot on and your boot drops down into a bog or something like that, your boot's going to flood anyway. So you may as well just have a shoe on and be done with it. It's just a hell of a lot easier that way. So going back to this Dartmoor trip, I remember then we had another day off doing something else, and then the last day it was driving home, but we were driving home in the evening to miss the traffic, and we parked the car somewhere else on the South Moor. I can't remember where now. And again, we went for another walk, but this one actually the sun came out bizarrely, luckily. And the main thing I remember of that one is with Sasha at the time. She didn't like cows. She wasn't interested in sheep. She ignored everything apart from a ball. She loved chasing a ball. If you chase a ball, actually, I should tell you that story actually about a ball. That's quite funny. I'll tell you in a minute. It's not anything to do with the outside, but I'll tell you what now. 1997 or 8, something like that. Mum and I went over to Ireland, and over in Ireland they got beautiful beaches. And back then we had Sasha, which was my dog, and the mum had Pippa, which was her dog. And Sasha was like a mongrel cross of all sorts of different things, but was a really, really gentle, soft dog, about Lassie's size, maybe a little bit smaller than Lassie, but not much. Very much a Lassie-sized dog, but a very short-haired dog. Very short hair. Lassie is like really fluffy and that, but Sasha had a very short coat. And then we had Pippa, who was smaller than Sasha, but she was like a whippet type of thing. And boy, when she ran, did she run? She definitely had some sort of whippet in her, and she was freakingly fast, much faster than Sasha. But Sasha always got the ball when you threw the ball, because even though Pippa was faster than Sasha and got to the ball first, because she was running so bloody fast, she ran past the ball, had to turn around and come back again. By the time she could run past the ball, turn around and come back, Sasha got to the ball and grabbed the ball first. And that happened every single time. It didn't matter where I was throwing the ball, how far I threw this ball, Sasha, even though she was slower, always 100% got the ball first, even though she was slower, because it was so funny. Pippa was just like so fast. She every time, I don't know whether her coordination was off. And I can't remember whether she tried to get the ball as she was running past, but she never got it as she was running past. She always missed it. So it was so funny watching her come back. But this thing that was so funny, and it still cracks me up now. It was so ridiculous. And it's only I'm sure other people might do something stupid as well. But we were down on the beach, and there was this big rock pool thing. And I was kind of like sort of thinking, I was like scratching my head thinking, now, what happens if I throw the ball to the other side of this rock pool? Will they go around the rock pool and try and get the ball on the other side that way? Or will they just go straight forward and swim across this rock pool? Because none of them had been in the none of them. Neither of them were water dogs. If you went down to the beach, which we did sometimes with them, they'd avoid the water. They wouldn't go anywhere near water. They weren't like Lassie. They're the complete opposite of Lassie. Lassie just loves water. But these two, they hated the water. They wouldn't go near it. So I thought, well, I wonder what's going to happen if I throw this ball the other side. I thought, well, they're bound to run around. Because surely they realize there's water there, and they will run around the other side of this rock pool. So I threw this ball. Pippa, she must have known what it was. I don't know what it was with Pippa, but Pippa, for some reason, understood not to go straight forward. So Pippa ran around this rock pool. But Sasha, she was the thickest, stupidest dog I have ever known. So I threw the ball, and Sasha just legged it straight, had no idea that there was water there. She was just completely content or completely focused on that ball. And she just legged it across and just flew off the stones, whatever it was there. I don't think, my guess is that she probably thought that the water, because there was no movement, I think it was quite still, she must have thought that water was a solid object, because it was so funny, because when she went across, and she suddenly discovered that this solid object wasn't a solid object, it was a water. And it was so funny how she just belly landed in this water, suddenly realized what the hell she done, swam across this rock pool. She still got the bloody ball fast, because Pippa had to go all the way around this rock pool, and so it was so funny. It just cracks me up. It's so funny how that. Only I would be so stupid to throw a ball across the rock pool. One dog goes round and one goes straight across. But it really was. She was not expecting that water at all. And I was laughing my ass off. I mean, I felt a tiny bit cruel that I'd subjected Sasha to this thing. But it was so funny. I remember, I should never forget that. The days I die when that happened. That was just absolutely hilarious. And I say, back then, I didn't know anything about clothing, and I bought a barber jacket. And I remember having a barber jacket on, and I had one of those wax hats on as well. I must have looked like Charlie back then, but I should remember it was an interesting trip. That one, it wasn't walking; it was just a holiday trip. But I remember that; it was so funny. But then, like I said, going back to Sasha and the cows, she ignored birds, she ignored sheep, She ignored squirrels. Sasha just ignored everything. The only thing that she was interested in was a ball. And if you threw a ball, you can guarantee she would run after that ball forever and ever and ever. And she would not stop running after that ball. Now, I don't know about other dogs, but quite often when a dog gets a ball, they run around with it and they won't bring the ball back. Sasha was the opposite. And I never trained her to do this, but you throw the ball, she'd leg it after the ball, grab the ball, bring it back, drop it at your feet, and wait for you to throw the ball again. And I never trained her to do that. She just did that. And as she got older, what she used to do is she was so excited for the ball to be thrown like the next time, that when she was like 2 or 3 meters from you, the ball would come like flying out of her mouth, because she literally just in mid-run let go of the ball. So she was like so keen to get the ball to me as quickly as possible. She wouldn't even run up to me and drop the ball at my feet. There was this point when she was like 2 or 3 meters from me to literally throw the ball, or drop the ball from her mouth. Because she was running, this ball would then come flying out of her mouth. You then have to try and grab the ball super bloody quickly to catch this ball and then throw it again for her. And she just wouldn't stop. She would just chase the ball all the time. She just wouldn't give up. And I don't think it was that finished her off, but I mean, she was just literally she spent her whole time chasing a damn ball. We still got to 16. But yeah, that was so funny. But like I said, this last day of this trip, and then we parked the car in this foresty area. This is still again in 2004. This is the same trip back then. And we walked past some cows, and that was the only time that Sasha barked at anything. She just ignored pretty much everything, but she didn't do anything. It was like she walked past these cows as we were like walking. She went woof, 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 like that, as if to say, this is my path. Get out of the bloody way. And the cow shifted, and we carried on walking, and that was pretty much the end of our trip. And then we obviously just got back to car, and we left late afternoon. And we got home about 2 hours later. And that was, like I said, as I may have mentioned before, that was like when I suddenly started thinking, well, hang on a minute, we don't have to drive 2 hours, spend a week down on Dartmoor, when you can actually just do it in 2 hours. So then after we got back home, I said to Sarah, look, actually what we could do is we could go down once a month, and get down there first thing in the morning, leave at like 6 in the morning, get down there at 8, get walking at 9, walk all day, stop for lunch and all that type of thing, and then get back to the car late afternoon, and then just come back in the evening. So that week trip that we had down there really was the introduction of Dartmoor, properly walking on Dartmoor, and like the introduction of actually being able to get down there without thinking this mindset. Because again, it's like 20 years ago, and I was probably, I had been driving quite a long time back then, because by that time I was over 30. So I'd been driving, probably about 15 years. So driving long distance wasn't really a problem. When I was in America, I used to drive all the time in America with my dad. There's a couple of trips I did in America actually driving. That would be an interesting conversation as well, because I did some down especially for our American friends. I did some driving down in the Utah area, Zion National Park, and the Canyonland area, and that type of thing. There was a couple of interesting drives down there I did a long time ago as well, back in the 1990s. So that might make an interesting thing to talk about, because it's not really camping and hiking, but it is like the outdoors and that type of thing. Just something a little bit different. So and that's how it all started, really. All right, so I think what I'm going to do, if you've got any questions or anything like that, pop a question down, and I'll hang around for a few more minutes. I'm just going to go and get a drop more water, so just excuse me just for 2 minutes, okay? And I'll be right back. If you've got any questions, ask them now while I just get some water because my mouth is really, really dry. Otherwise, if there isn't any and you all disappear in the next couple of minutes, then I'm going to switch over in about 20 minutes to the watch channel and I'll just do a few minutes on there. So if you're still here when I come back, post a question, and if you're not, then I'll disappear anyway. But just give me a minute, I just need a drink. Ancient. 50 now, 50, and feeling it as well, unfortunately. But then, as I've said, things aren't so easy here. So I'm not walking as much as I used to, unfortunately. I'm not doing the exercise that I used to do. So I must admit, the old bones and joints and things like that probably aren't as supple as they were, you know, a few years ago. But yeah, I'm 50 now. Jesus Christ, where does that time go? I remember when I was like 20 and then 30 and then 40, and now 50. You know, where does that time go? But you know, it's so yeah, it was yeah, I don't know where the time has gone, to be honest. I really don't. I mean, it's not depressing, but it's kind of like, where the hell is that time gone? You know, to get to 50, and you're like sort of thinking, flipping heck. But still, we've got plenty of life in us, so we'll carry on going for another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I know, I feel your pain. This fizzy thing that I had on my feet, oh, for God's sake, what the bloody thing's called? But anyway, that came about, I don't know, about 5 years ago, something like that, 5 or 6 years ago. And I must admit, the declines was started around about that time, because before that I was walking like loads and loads and loads and loads. And then when this fizzy thing came on my feet and I couldn't walk so much, that, I must admit, set me back, you know, a little bit. It has gone now, it has cleared now, but it has unfortunately left like a residue or something like that. Because what I find now is once I'm actually walking for when I stop and I sit down in the car or at home, and then I get up and I walk to the kitchen or I walk around or something like that, the first like 2 or 3 minutes I'm not literally hobbling around, but I'm almost hobbling and shuffling around like a bloody octogenarian, like 100-year-old on a Zimmer frame, something like that. Because the feet, they just seem to, I wouldn't say seize up as such, but they're not quite functioning properly when I first stand up and get walking. So it's quite painful too. It is quite it's uncomfortable more is probably a better description. But then once I've been walking for like literally 5 minutes less, 3 or 4 minutes, something like that, it's just like it's just like the sort of the ease out of whatever stiffness they're in. It seems like you don't want to stiffen, but whatever stiffness they're in, it goes, and then I can walk on them without any problems, whatsoever. Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, I'm more tired now because unfortunately I don't get to bed quite so early as I'd like to, but that's a different story. So I don't get as much sleep as I'd like to either, but again, that's another story, one that I can't it's nothing to do with YouTube or anything like that, it's just life. So of course, I'm not walking quite as much as as I would ideally like to, but again, that's how it is. So now when I go camping and things like that, I'm more than blooming happy to walk somewhere, pitch the tent, and just stay there for like 2 or 3 nights and just relax in that area and just go for some short walks from there, because it's actually quite relaxing and enjoyable. Just literally just stay in one place and just do absolutely sweet FA, apart from making some videos or something like that. But hopefully next year the weather will be better and I'll get back to the Lake District and so maybe try and do some more video of what's around, and what have you like that. And maybe if I've got enough energy, I'll try and sort of walk from one camp to another camp for more than 2 minutes or something. But kind of play it by ear really. But I have at least now figured out a good hotel on the motorway to stop on the way up, so that kind of breaks the journey up. And I know I can get there in like mid-afternoon, so as long as it's like springtime or something like that, then I can get there for 4 o'clock. And as long as there's enough light until 6 or 7 o'clock, then that gives plenty of time to get somewhere to find a camp for the first night. So hopefully I can get up there more next year and try and get a little bit more camping in, up there, because it actually worked out quite nicely, to be honest. It was quite pleasant up there. The place where I camped, of course, this last time was the same place and literally was bog central of the Lake District, to be honest. I mean, both camps were, especially the second one, was literally underwater. I mean, when I collapsed, the trail started down and everything else like that, there was literally just water under where I was camping. So it's good evidence that Cuba fiber is waterproof anyway, because I didn't get wet from that. I only got wet from rain coming in. But there's more videos on that trip. I just did that one trip. I just did that one video so far about how to deal with weather and that type of thing, but there are more videos on that to do. I've uploaded another one from August, which you've probably seen or will see, and I've still got under some more from September, so we'll catch up. They're all a bit mixed up at the moment, so you just kind of have to sort of figure them out as best as you can really at the moment, because I'm just sort of triaging videos, just thinking, well, that's quite important, so let's try and get that one up, and then that's a bit different, so I'm trying to work around it like that a bit at the moment. But anyway, that's about nearly an hour, and of course I wasted half an hour trying to get, oh yeah, yes, the reason why I couldn't get the webcam working, I don't think I actually said, did I? I was going to say, then I got distracted myself. I was thinking about using the GoPro for a webcam, and I set it up a few weeks ago just to see if it would work. And I think I did tell you, didn't I? Remember now, my brain isn't working either. But anyway, for some stupid reason, the computer thought that the GoPro was attacked. Whenever I told that story anyway. All right, I'm going to disappear, and I will be back in a few minutes. Give me like 15 minutes, and I'll whip over to the watch channel. If anyone wants to go over there, join me for a few minutes, you're more than welcome. Whether any of the watch people will join on, that's going to be interesting actually, because the last time I did a video on the watch channel was what, a month ago, something like that, and I had about 100 subscribers on there, mostly Rolexy, a few Garmin people, but I hadn't done any. I hadn't even thought about G-Shock. And then in the last few weeks, obviously, I got this G-Shock, and from that G-Shock, I've had a huge injection of subscribers on there. Got over 300 on there now, so it'll be interesting to see whether anyone joins on there. Not that I know a huge amount about watches, so we'll kind of wing that one a little bit, but it's kind of interesting anyway. But thank you all very much for watching, with the 4 of you anyway, and we'll catch you all another time. And as I said, if you want to pop over there, I will see you in a minute. And Scout, thank you very much. I think you probably stayed the entire time, and anyone else as well. Thanks very much. And we'll do another one in a few weeks' time. Take care. Thanks very much.